Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I was like, who's going to come? It's so nice out. Thanks. So glad you're all here. It's really nice to feel, yeah, that kind of warmth and energy moving around in the city. That June gloom that turned into July doom was a serious bummer. So even though I can't believe that it's August 20th, does that seem unusual to any? I'm so happy for the sunshine and to appreciate that. And really happy to be with you all here in the kind of final moments of this beautiful book that we've been moving through the last 6 months or plus. No problem if this is your first time here and you've never heard of this book. I'm going to do actually a little bit of a kind of reprise of the main theme of this book and why we do it as we kind of wind our way towards the dedication. And this week in the mornings, I've been sitting online with Tsoknyi Rinpoche. Some of you have heard of him and or sat with him before. I forgot how funny he is. Like, he truly is a hoot. And I got the chance to ask Rinpoche, like, was this like natural for you? Did you learn this from like the Lamas Yut? And he was like, you know what? Laughter opens the subtle body. And so many of the teachings here that we're doing are about opening the subtle body, which if it's the first time you hear that term, just kind of feel the resonance of what it would mean for all the emotion residues, all the stress, all the kind of weight we carry in the body to flow freely. So that would be kind of a healthy, subtle body. And laughter really helps with that. I have a feeling that kind of being at ease in the sunshine can also help with that. And I bring him up because we're going to be moving into his book next, which is called Open Heart, Open Mind. And some of you may know this is a book based on an 8th century text called Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life. And I think we're going to have a lot of acoustic accompaniment tonight from 24th Street because it is so nice out. And in this 8th century text, it's so well quoted by so many wisdom teachers because there's such like pith essential instructions. And the original text is broken into kind of 9 main parts. And this commentary, which is done by Pema Chödrön, includes 8 parts. So 8, 9, she skips the last chapter with intention. It's not that she forgot, but she skips the last chapter because it has to do with some pretty intensive themes around emptiness and what it means to not just define emptiness, but to actually experience and inhabit a worldview of emptiness, which is needed to dedicate yourself to the awakening of all beings for all time. You kind of need that emptiness view. And this book by Tsoknyi Rinpoche that we're going to next get into unpacks that so beautifully, so beautifully. And then I'm going to be really honest. I bought the commentary for the 9th chapter from a couple different Buddhist scholars, and I was like, whoa, I'm going to need like 2 years before I can digest it and then share it with you. However, I don't think you're getting, you're not losing anything by approaching it through Tsoknyi Rinpoche's book. It's just that the 9th chapter gets pretty intellectual and theoretical. And I am Eve, by the way, for anyone I haven't met. And I really love bringing these teachings down to earth. And by down to earth, I mean embodied and emotional. That's really kind of the through thread I like to offer with how these teachings kind of live, I feel, in our day-to-day life. So that's a little bit of the roadmap of where we're headed. So today we'll finish up this last chapter on dissolving the barriers. And that is dissolving any barrier between ourselves and other beings in terms of how we feel compassion and care. So for most of us, it's pretty easy to feel compassion and care to people that we care about, especially when they're nice to us. But for some of us, sometimes it's harder to feel that care for certain people outside of our spheres of concern. And so we visited that last week. It was like a little bit of one of those real talk, hard realities of what it's like to really bring everybody into your care. We'll continue that a bit this week. And then next week, there's a beautiful aspect of this book as a kind of symmetry. So when we open this book, the first main 3 chapters are inviting this inspiration to open our heart for the sake of all beings, and doing so with these beautiful prayers and dedication. So there's part of it's kind of this mode of self-inquiry and reflection on the world around you. Like, really, what does this world need? And really, what is the source of your own happiness? And as we kind of look into that, we discover the world needs love. The source of our own happiness is love. It's not a spoiler alert because we already did it 6 months ago, but just as a reminder for some of you. And then there's such a lovely way of kind of opening the field or opening the space of these teachings by kind of offering our supplication is one word, offering our prayers, offering our intention. And the way this is done, sometimes just through imagination, is imagining a whole room full of flowers, a whole room full of lit candles. And then we offer that imagined, beautiful kind of way of honoring these teachings. And then we come back to the dedication and we look back retrospectively. So not just the looking forward, I offer this beauty, I offer all the light, all the perfume, all the jewelry, all the flowers, I offer it all. Please offer, please let me receive these teachings. And then we look back and we kind of dedicate all of the merit. Some people in this room have been here almost every night for all of these months, dedicating your hearts and minds to these teachings. Like, what an amazing offering. Next week, it might be the first night for some people, offering their heart and mind to the teachings. And to kind of take that moment and say, this matters. My practice really matters. Applying myself to these teachings matter. Stunned confusion. What do you guys think? Does it matter? Does your practice matter? It does. How do you know it matters? Yeah, Chris.
It just feels so good that thank you, Jimmy. It just feels so good that I'm to the point where if this is wrong, I'm okay with being wrong.
Okay. Anybody else? How do you know it matters? Your practice, meaning coming here whether one night or every night. How do you know it matters, your practice?
Because I know what my life is like without it. And my life without it is even more suffering than my life with it. I still suffer with it, but
Yeah.
at least I have some. I have a refuge from all of that, and without it, it's really a drag.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Jimmy. Andre?
You can see slowly getting the wisdom and seeing how your ignorance gets slowly removed, and
Yeah,
you can see the effect of that on others, on your behavior and on others.
that's right. Yeah, and I love you threading that together, right? We see how removing, you're calling it the ignorance, which is the traditional form, often, kind of having the obscurations purified is another way of saying it, or just seeing clearly. When that gets, when our clear seeing gets brighter, it's so much easier for us to inhabit the world for ourselves, but also for others in a meaningful way. Yeah. Hannah,
Hello, can you hear me?
we can.
Oh, sorry, I don't think you can see me though.
True.
Not that
It's
that's
okay.
important. Um, I was gonna say, for me, a lot of the reason why I attend and practice this is for myself. But I have experienced Like I guess I would say for kind of selfish reasons, it matters to me because it makes me feel good and all the things like that. But then I have noticed, like, I guess this shouldn't be such a surprise, that it really allows me to, like, I mean, obviously be more prepared and like show up in the world for other people, but also to explain, like, not that I'm like trying to teach people things, but you know, like meaningful conversations, I feel like end up having these paradoxes, like they're complicated. And if you've, you know, been like looking into some of these questions when it's not necessarily a state of emergency, you know, like just during your time, you know, it's like just as
Yeah.
a, anyway, I've been able to just be there for for other people without it being really like hard. Like I can actually
Beautiful.
manage some things that, yeah.
I love that. And that is, right, that's the very pith. So what does it mean to have a guide to a bodhisattva way of life? It means how do we learn to become bodhisattvas, which begins with awakening bodhicitta, this heart that cares about being there for other people, this heart that is like less encumbered by our own preoccupations with our life, that we can be available. And then no one needs to believe this, and totally up to you, but I do want to offer the possibility that this matters for something that's kind of unknowable and transcendent, that our practice and being a group of beings who are dedicating ourselves to something like compassion and like clear seeing, it has a very difficult to quantify in modern science, palpable impact on this world. And maybe not just on this world in this time, but that we may be part of, you know, this ongoing momentum towards love and awakening. I know it doesn't look good out there, like that's our onward momentum, but I think it really matters to practice. And this idea of, you know, give up all hope of fruition, like practice with all of your intention and as though possibly like your hair was on fire, like that's how important your practice is, but give up any hope of how you think it's going to turn out. Like, oh, I don't know if this world is really becoming more available to bodhisattvas because, I mean, look at this world. That's like a very limited view. Like the sacred view is like this practice matters in ways unknowable to us, and it really matters. So again, you don't need to believe that, but I feel there's a kind of, yes, I know that it helps me. I love that you said it, Hannah, sleep better. You know, Jimmy said kind of be a lot better of a person to myself and others, you know, and just these ways that we are showing up in the world. But I think it also matters in a much larger universal sense beyond our capacity to really understand, but maybe there's like that, just that kind of glimmer of that this practice matters in non-quantifiable ways. This practice matters in this world where it feels there's so much increasing darkness around us. And one thing I know for me, you know, the way I feel this practice shine through is not only kind of the resilience of being able to say, yeah, it seems like everything is pretty hard and things are getting pretty dark, you know, to have that resilience of I'm still here and I know how to be with my heart so I can stand up every day with it. I also feel so much more availability to the beauty in this world. I think when we don't have the practice, we're kind of compartmentalizing or suppressing all the difficult aspects of this world because we can't attend to them, we don't know how to meet them, maybe we don't have a worldview that can incorporate them, so it's like too much, can't deal, over there. And that becomes weighty, becomes heavy. It's like it accumulates and a burden arises so that we kind of also don't have as great access to our joy and to seeing the beauty around us. So I know that meditation and mindfulness and compassion practices make us all more sensitive, and that's hard. Like, why would you decide to become more sensitive in a world that hurts? But you're also more sensitized to the beauty of this world. And that's it's not like it's a balancing act, but it's a full spectrum of being alive to this world. And again, holding open the possibility that as we become more and more sensitive, but we cut through, this sense of me and mine and that, self-cherishing that this whole last chapter and essentially the whole book is about cutting through. There's an ease with receiving and being sensitive to the pains that we experience and that our loved ones experience and that the world experiences. And there's also an ease in letting all the joys come through. One thing Tsoknyi Rinpoche said this morning, I was like cracking up so hard, I like startled my cats. It was like just so funny. And he was like, samsara's great. Make sure you appreciate samsara. Like, you're comfortable. There's so much pleasantness. Like, don't get it wrong. Don't try to be serious. He's like, but don't try to hold on. That's ridiculous. So that kind of, how do we find the joy, right, also of the Bodhisattva path, I think is a big part of it. And so for our, our meditation here tonight, we're going to do a really, a simple and foundational practice, one that starts to really get right at the core of how we can start to grasp or want to pull away from. And that's the mindfulness of feelings practice, or the Vedana practice. And that's the practice where we start to notice, specifically through the body, when sensation arises, how quickly we meet just the raw basic experience of sensation with a label or attribution: pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. Very simple. I bet many of the people in this room have done this practice before. But I'm going to really invite us to find not only kind of that ease of noticing sensation and it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, but also noticing kind of with the neutral, like, what is that? Neutral is such a funny word. It feels like so few things are actually neutral. And sometimes when we pay attention to the neutral, there can be a quality that's actually basically okay, like our fundamental okayness. So often we're pulled between these polars of really don't like the strain in my shoulder, really like that warm sense in my hand, really don't, like just those back and forth. And the in-betweens, there's kind of a quality of like, everything's okay. Everything's okay. It's interesting because as many of you know, in neuroscientific research, about 10 years ago, there was this huge watershed finding of what's called the default mode network. And this was when they put people in the fMRI brain scanner to try to understand, different activities of what was happening in the brain when we did certain activities, when we watched a video or we thought about a loved one. But then there's all these moments in between watching a video or thinking about a loved one. And in these moments in between, they discovered this default mode, which unfortunately, when we're not meditating, what do you think it's filled with? Yeah, you for sure. Me, worries, what's wrong, survival, like not, it's not often that pleasant, and it's kind of like all over the place. And so this idea that we can, when we focus on the neutral, because we're bringing mindful awareness to whatever is here, instead of it falling into that distracted, neurotic self-preoccupation, there's like, oh yeah, there's kind of nothing here. That's kind of okay. Like, is that okay? So that'll be our exploration. So among the most epic of preambles for our sit, but I thought, yeah, just getting so close to the end here, kind of wanting us to feel the momentum of this text, the momentum of the themes of this text. So taking a moment to find a posture that feels supportive. I know it's warm out, and if you feel sleepy at all, you can move to the very edge of your seat so that your back is upright. And let's begin with some opening up of the chest by rolling our shoulders. So inhaling our shoulders up. Exhale, opening the chest, releasing through the mouth. Inhaling through the nostrils, shoulders up. And then sighing. And one more time, inhaling up. And taking a moment to continue that feeling of exhale, softening and releasing through the muscles in the face. And softening and releasing through the neck and the shoulders. And this softening and maybe even a bit of undefending at the heart. This invitation that we can feel a gentleness in the space of the heart. And then softening and deepening through the belly, deepening our presence, deepening a sense of stability through the belly. And as we find this softening and releasing through the front of the body, we also invite these natural qualities of vividness, uprightness, wakefulness as we inhale, bringing in that brightness all the way from the sits bones to the crown. And it's quite warm in here, but we can feel that coolness of breath traveling in through the nostrils. And with the possibility of really feeling that our practice matters, we can begin with a dedication of our practice, inviting this heart of bodhicitta, something that's always already there, that yearning to see a world in which suffering is alleviated, people feel at ease and peaceful, love and harmony abound. So connecting to bodhicitta is allowing ourselves to feel that, the warmth of that which is always already here. And infusing that dedication and intention of our practice, strengthening this clear seeing of our heart of bodhicitta. If it's available, feel that in the body, not only as a yearning or consideration, but as a sense in the body. And allowing bodhicitta to be here. But now shifting attention, focus, and awareness to the entire tactile field of sensation throughout the body. And in this practice, we allow whatever sensations become predominant to be the focus. So if there's an itch, if there's an ache, if there's a tingling, first we notice the very simple, raw quality of sensation. And then we notice this placement of our judgment or this attribution. Is this pleasant, unpleasant? Or is there a certain thing that just feels neutral? So beginning here, allowing the attention, awareness to simply roam freely throughout the space of the body, and slowing down that process of liking and not liking by really noticing the raw sensation, the pure experience, and noticing whether we find it pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. And then letting attention and awareness keep moving through the body, not stopping anywhere. Of course, distractions arise, thoughts, memories, images, fantasies. No problem. But regain our awareness and attention by just relaxing and releasing and coming back to the sensations throughout the body, our noticing of them, and finding the way that we place our judgment right upon sensation, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, but giving ourselves that moment to just experience sensation just as it is. You may notice a sense of energy in the hands. Maybe you experience it as pleasant or maybe neutral. And once noticed, you then allow yourself to be simply witnessing, simply having this mindful awareness of whatever arises in the body. And so next, maybe a sensation of movement around the forehead like an itch. Is that pleasant or unpleasant? Simply neutral. And with curiosity, noticing these preferences. Once we've labeled it as maybe unpleasant, returning again to this witnessing mode, bringing our mindful awareness to the entire field of the body once again. If any sensations arise that just feel too unpleasant and strong, hard to not really merge with it, please feel free to send compassion, sense of care towards whatever is hard to be with. And then return to the breath, moving focus away from that area. Bring curiosity to the more subtle sensations of body. May not feel even so located in one area, but the sensation of the body overall. First, with curiosity, what is the quality of the body? And the subtle energy that may be experienced throughout the body. And then maybe another itch arises or an ache, but letting the baseline of your awareness become the subtle sensation of simply being in the body. These subtle energies that move through the body. This primary anchor of attention and awareness, the subtle feeling of energies in the body. We might otherwise consider just the neutral experience of being in body. And then other stronger sensations that arise, attending there, labeling pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, but then returning to this more subtle sense of the body, these subtle body channels throughout the body, and the flow of vital energy within them, the body of light. And when you catch yourself in distraction, notice the experience of returning to this presence with the body. Really feeling that shift from mind wandering away to fantasy or memory or image. And then mind, awareness, and attention saturating experience of the body. Releasing the pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral labels, and really bring all attention and awareness to this noticing of the subtle layer and level of energy in the body. This might be hard to experience, no problem. Whether it feels too subtle or still too filled with other sensations. Just feel, sense, or imagine this subtle body, channels of light within the body, the light being the energy of the body. And if the attention has become a bit diffuse or distracted, for our remaining moments of practice, let's recommit, remembering our practice matters. And bring attention and awareness to the body, to the subtle experience of energy moving through the body. And consider the possibility that this natural state of bringing our attention and awareness to the body, we could touch into a feeling of just simple okayness. Whatever distracting thoughts or sensations arise, can we consider them as not necessarily ours, not necessarily personal, just thoughts and sensations arising? And seeing if we can continue to find a place of rest in just the simple, naked experience of being present in the body, present with the subtle energies of the body. Thank you for your practice. So we have such a beautiful opportunity here as a community formed for just tonight like this. Never again will it be like this. And each time that we gather, we get to engage just like all the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, like all the early monks and nuns of the Buddha coming together for teachings. We get to engage with the teachings. Not only our practice, but our discussion, our reflection, and then also exercising this potential for exquisite non-harming, like non-harming at the deepest level, non-harming in our thoughts, non-harming in our actions, non-harming in our words, so that when we are listening to one another or sharing with one another, we're thinking about all of us here together, right? Not just what we want to say or what we're hearing, like really remembering that piece. And, you know, I think it's especially challenging. Sometimes we get self-conscious about what we're sharing, and then we say something, and then there's a like, oh my God, why did I say that? I didn't mean it that way, or oh my God. You know, so very kind with ourselves, and then very kind with others, like, oh my God, why'd they say that? Why'd they say it like that, right? Can we also engage? None of you would ever do that, but, you know, just considering how we can be, holding in our hearts that ethic of non-harming or compassion, that really is beneficial. I know for some folks it can be challenging, this idea of people connecting and sharing. And I have one friend who says, I never go to teachings where people are sharing. I just can't handle it. It makes me uncomfortable. And I was like, I respect that. I don't think you learn as much. Because it's like listening, we learn at a certain level, but like the reflecting and then the hearing other dimensions, we just learn at a different level. So with that, I'd love to hear if anybody had questions or reflections on that practice. Anything that came up that you wanted to share in your great generosity of being part of the community, or anything that was confusing or new. If you're here, there is a mic, which is helpful so friends online can hear. And if you're online, you can raise a hand. We have like no one online showing their, are you guys all like watching the sunset or making dinner, or just kicking it? Kind of jealous. But any friends online with or without camera, you're welcome for questions or reflections. Yes, Mackenzie.
Thank you. I noticed that when I focused on the sensations that were uncomfortable or that I labeled as don't like, I was able for them to become neutral
Awesome.
by like just being like, oh, that's just a sensation. Like that's just like some little piece of dust that somehow got right here in my nostril. And it's like fluttering as I breathe. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just what's happening. And yeah, just kind of acknowledging that, and things that were uncomfortable started to subside when I thought about them that way. That was a new thing for me.
Wonderful. And that's, like that direct experiencing. It's one thing to hear, like, everything that's difficult is impermanent and changes. But then to be like, oh no, it actually can, in the course of 90 seconds, change, right? So, yeah, wonderful. Yeah, awesome.
I had a thought that delighted me so profoundly during the meditation. It surprised me. It came out of nowhere. I lost the body. I was starting to ruminate. And then
Did you say, wait, lost the body, started to ruminate?
I lost the body, started to ruminate. But then another thought popped into my head, because I've been grounded enough to think about or feel the different parts of the body. And just the thought popped into my head spontaneously. This part of my body is capable of making thoughts. Cool. And it completely annihilated the rumination.
Yeah,
It's so funny.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's beautiful to see, like, in whatever way we can, like, I think I used that analogy last week of like the butterfly net of our attention and awareness, and like pull it back here. So it's like some part of your attention awareness that was distracted and ruminating, you then were able to like harness it back to being in the body, which is beautiful. And do you notice that rumination, kind of body dissociation, habit general, like other than practice?
Oh, super commonly.
Yeah.
When the delight for me was the feeling that, well, yeah, of course, that's what this part of the body can do. The brain can make thoughts. This bit like pumps blood, and like this thing is my foot. It kind of removed a lot of the specialness of the rumination.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you can do that. That's cool.
I see. So
You can do other things as well.
actually feeling the body through thought, like
Yeah.
that you're ruminating is evidence of the body's like kind of phenomenal manifestation in the world.
Yeah, just doing body stuff.
Yeah, not that special.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I think, it's interesting. I'm sure there's such an array here in this room of people who feel like I rather like not focus on the body because there's too much sensation, or I'd rather not focus on the body because I can't feel anything in there. There's like a pretty natural distribution of that for folks for different reasons. So the practice can have a kind of a different quality of like, I don't even like where the hell this body thing is. I'm nowhere near it. Or, God, there's so much sensation. I just really don't like it. Either way, we can still kind of find that more like witnessing, gentle mode with the body. Yeah. Other thoughts? Yeah. Hello.
Hello. I had an interesting experience this time doing the practice you're mentioning, my hands feeling nice. And at some point I realized I was running away from the unpleasant sensations. So I was just like, wow, there's like nothing unpleasant going on, so many pleasant things. And then at some point I was like, oh no, there's definitely like my neck's really sore, and like there's definitely things I don't like. And I was seeing that sort of extra maybe relationship I was applying where I was just like ignoring and not trying to not acknowledge that. And so it was a really interesting discovery I enjoyed seeing.
And when you noticed, what happened?
I think it kind of loosened that a bit. I think, so it was easier for me to be with the things that were unpleasant, and then kind of that dissolving as well, which was nice. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, it's pretty interesting that we can do anything other than focus on what's happening in our body, actually, right? Because like there's a lot going on. There's a lot of signals that are coming through. And it's also interesting to again notice that natural impermanence of even when one part of the body feels like it's so predominant, then all of a sudden we're thinking about some other part of the body. Like it always keeps changing too. So it's such a rich source of like directly experiencing, you know, impermanent, shifting, moving, changing. So yeah, thank you so much.
I could go, sure. I felt like when you were talking about well, first of all, I was so moved by you talking about how that last thing that you were saying about how this matters because there's some way that maybe we're connected to some stream of being and it was so heartening because, you know, sometimes things seem like they just don't matter, right?
Yeah.
And so that was so lovely. And then when you were doing the subtle body thing, I was just having these sort of vision of just this kind of dark velvet field with these little, like almost like a little animation of neurons firing these little glowy sort of things back and forth, like little fireflies, I guess, in the dark night. And I'd have a thought, and I could tell that it was really that the field was really narrowing around the thought, and then when the thought would dissipate, I would be back to sort of a baseline kind of thing, and it was really just lovely. Yeah.
So wonderful. Yeah, and it's really interesting when we get that visual cue. Again, some of us will be more visual than others, and some will be more felt sense, but that, you know, that supportive sensory experience, you know, and yeah, and I agree, like there's such a magic and a mystery to like how much this might matter, you know, and it's not about us, right? It's about thousands of years of practice and probably thousands of years before that, you know, for all time. Like there's always this momentum of, you know, awakening or consciousness or being. So yeah, thank you. Yes, one here, one in the back, yes. Listen and Tori.
Yeah, I came in with a headache and that I have had for most of the day, and during the practice of like kind of focusing on the unpleasant things, I started noticing, you know, like my neck and other pain, and I tend to not want to think about those things because I feel like it heightens the the sensation. But then as the practice went on, and you were talking more about like the subtle body and energy, it was interesting. I like transcended that discomfort. And I think at some point you were talking about light and like the flow of energy, and I don't know if I felt it or it was like a vision or whatever, but there was like this light coming out of my chest, and I've never experienced that. And I was like, oh, this is, and then I think once I became like consciously aware of it instead of just being with it, it's sort of, and then another thought came up that was like very unrelated, and something I was like kind of contemplating today in sort of a stressful way.
Yes.
I noticed I had this like lump in my throat, and I was like, what is that? And so it was like almost like this blockage, and you know, and once I kind of became aware of it, it went away. But it was like, it was such a 180 from the nice like light and the feeling of that, and then it was like, oh.
It's such good noticing, you know, and again, just my hunch or my hit, because I know before you've had the headache go away, you know, in practice, and there's like, I wish I could say meditation healed migraines and headaches. I can't. But for sure, there's like form body, right?
Yeah.
And then subtle body, and then like body of awareness described in the traditions, and the subtle body. And I know, and sorry for folks if it's like the first time you heard subtle body and you're like, body of what? Like now there's light. But again, just take the impressionistic hit, and if it works, great, and if not, you know, and this idea of like this whole body being like, you know, channels of light. And then if that, you know, because we have been practicing and moving towards those subtle body practices. And it's almost like it kind of responds to the call of like, oh yeah, like what is here at that subtle body level. Once we've attended to the aches and the pains, we can kind of drop down and in. So then it makes sense to me that you were able to notice when a thought arose and it created a blockage, right? And that's how the system is purported to work. And I wouldn't bet money on it, but I think in my lifetime, we will see research and good research evidence on energy in the body, and we'll understand these blockages, and it won't feel like new age woo-woo human potential stuff anymore. And it's so good to kind of like notice and feel like what happens with the distress. And I have a hunch, I don't know if we'll ever be able to prove this, but I have a pretty strong hunch, and this definitely in the Tantra, you see this, where when we do experience that like you could just say healthy or open, subtle body, the stuff that's like crunchy rises to the surface to get kind of purified, right? And so, you know, the stressful, difficult, I had the same thing, like a stressful, difficult thing rose. And I was like, oh, yeah, you're needed here, you know? And not that I then start thinking about it, but since there's so much flow, it can arise and move. Like, as you said, that thought arose and it moved. So there's, you know, these practices, obviously, you know, the mind and body are so connected. This is like for our physical health and our mental health, these practices, right? Because so much of what goes on with aches and pains in the body is our mind and our soft tissue, but also, you know, these elements of stress or these elements of stressing about the pain in our body. So, yeah.
It's interesting that both can occur at the same time, right? It's like, yes, you can have neck tension or a headache, but you can also have this and just not be aware of it in like your day to day.
Yes.
Which is kind of sad in a way.
I know, but
Like,
so
to be
beautiful
so
it's there,
disconnected. Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And that same thing too can happen when you're like, I'm so tired, how am I gonna meditate? And then you're like, fing, like, wow, like there's wakefulness here, you know, that's not form body. So beautiful noticing. Yeah, and then the light at the heart, like, yeah, you know what that is. It's beautiful, you know, to feel and to experience. So, yeah.
Thank you.
And I think Tori had a,
Thanks. I was just going to mention I appreciated your prompt. I think you did it like once, maybe twice, around like movement. So I find when I'm doing practices like that, it's like the balance between that sort of resting, grounded energy of like finding the space, but then also the light spaciousness of like keeping it moving. You know?
Yeah.
You're like, okay, like not getting stuck in a spot.
Yes.
And like that sort of balancing of like groundedness, but also like impermanence and lightness.
Yes.
And so the prompt to like continue moving, sometimes will like do a perspective shift where I sort of like zoom out and see my whole body and like go like around from a different angle and then zoom back in. And I appreciated in the practice today where you prompted sort of that, for me at least, where like keeping moving,
yeah.
it can help to be a little more free
Yeah.
from getting stuck in a
Yeah,
spot.
beautiful. And also, you know, like in the small group this weekend, the stillness of awareness amid the movement of thoughts, right? That there can be movement and stillness, you know, at the same, there is stillness and movement at the same time. And that stillness doesn't have to be like a fixed, like I'm just right here rigidly on this one thing, but it does allow that fluidity. So, and I love that. It's so interesting, our kind of closed-eyed proprioception, like feeling our own body when nothing's actually moving, but actually it's kind of moving. Like it's a very, you know, all the ways that we kind of mess with our usual sense of the body in practice is so freeing. You know, like that, just a sense of the body being slightly more porous than the form body. I think it really like supports this, for lack of a better word, like juiciness of our practice, this mind and body fullness and richness. So thank you. Thanks, everyone. Anyone else? Oh, yes. Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. I don't know if I've ever met you before.
No, my name's Landis. This is my first time.
Welcome. Not to make you
Yeah.
on the spot. Sorry.
Yeah, but I loved it because I thought that, like, I've practiced this kind of observance of like what feels good, what feels bad, what's neutral. And I haven't sat for this long doing that practice. And as of recently, I've been going through a lot of recovery. My knees and my back have been really injured. And so that's hindered a lot of my hobbies and my, the things I like to do. And it's almost panic inducing sometimes because it just feels like it's forever. But when I was going through this practice of just observing, it's like the knees started to hurt. And I was like, okay, that doesn't hurt. I mean, that doesn't feel good, but it also became like more, all of a sudden it kind of clicked into a curiosity mindset of like,
Beautiful.
how does it feel actually? Like sure, it doesn't feel good, but it's not a detriment. It's just like a sensation. Yeah. So that was super powerful because it was something that became something that seemed like a hindrance to my path forward in life, almost became that path. Like it is part of the going forward type of thing. So that was super cool.
So glad you're here. Thank you for sharing.
Appreciate it.
Just grateful to be on your recovery path with you, because it is, I mean, all of us are recovering here all the time from, the mental, the physical, all of these different pain points. And it does bring us to the path, right? These difficulties. And I've said this before, and it's kind of cheesy, but like the reason I have ever had a job and like been able to research and teach meditation mindfulness is because mindfulness helps with pain, right? All the foundational research in the 70s, like all of that was around if we can experience sensation as sensation free from, I don't like it, it's wrong, why me, why won't it ever end? If we can like separate that with our meta awareness, it's huge. So just awesome that kind of naturally arose in your practice. And it is, it's really tricky for active folks when the body prevents us from being active. It can be actually pretty hard to sit in practice because of anxiety. So, whatever can support it, like being with other people obviously helps ground us. But like any kind of movement that doesn't hurt, I mean, there's like a world of experts in this room of people who've recovered from pain. And, this is not a fix-it session, but I think we've all made our way through, like, what can we do? And for me, in recovering from injury, a lot of compassion practice too. And not for like the pain, but just like, this is hard. This is hard.
Yeah, like towards yourself.
Exactly.
It's like, this is okay to feel frustrated or
Yep.
sad or just
Despair.
incapable. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. What was your name again?
Landis.
Landis. Nice to meet you. Thanks. Last comment here. Hi there.
Hello.
Nice to see you again.
Good to see you. It was interesting, like I felt a really sense of connectedness. I meditated this morning and by myself. Maybe it was the morning, but I was thinking about a lot of things, coming up that would come up today, and but this sit was much more like, I think, just receiving. So like a feeling of like openness. I felt I saw some sort of maybe half dreams or something like that, things that I wouldn't consciously think of, but like just came to me unconsciously. And but they were all very like a pleasant feeling. But yeah, I felt like the container, this room, the people in this room made it feel just like a much more peaceful and connected.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, I think being together, if it's safe enough, really helps downregulate. And so the mind doesn't need to do so many things. And we can kind of be in the practice. So that's wonderful. Yeah. Oh, yeah, good. Thanks, Ron. So yeah, this is why it's taken us so long to get to the book, because you all have so much brilliant, penetrating wisdom. But I did want to share a couple passages today. One moment here. Yeah, some of you know, sometimes Shanti Deva just gets right to the point in a way that almost feels like he's mocking us, maybe. But it's definitely coming from a place of love. So he says, "Is there need for lengthy explanation? Childish beings look out for themselves, while Buddhas labor for the good of others. See the difference that divides them. If I do not give away my happiness for others' pain, enlightenment will never be attained, and even in samsara, joy will fly from me. Leaving future lives outside the reckoning, even this life's needs are not fulfilled. When servants do not do their work, the masters do not pay the wages that are earned." So that last line's a little confusing. But this idea of, is there need for lengthy, I just like childish beings look out for themselves and Buddhas labor for the good of others. And again, always that balance and caveat here, not as though we don't feed ourselves and pay our rent, do what needs to be done, but then whenever possible. It's not just, what more can I get, right? Like, it's so childish, that wanting of more, like more, like protect mine, and this idea that in and of itself, if we do not give our happiness away, if we don't share it with others, then like we can't even actually enjoy what's going on here in samsara. And one other thing Tsoknyi Rinpoche said this morning about samsara is appreciate it, enjoy it, but feel gratitude for it. Like recognize it for the gift that it is. So then, yeah, it's interesting, this idea of leaving future lives outside the reckoning. So even if we don't imagine that our behaviors in this lifetime will have anything to do with what happened to us in further lifetimes, that, if we aren't doing our work, or if we're doing our work when servants do not do their work and the masters do not pay the wages earned. She actually talks about this. Pema Chödrön says that this is the story behind all revolutions. She says, I think of South Africa. For years, cruel masters didn't pay the wages earned. Apartheid or separateness was legalized and deeply ingrained. Yet many people worked with the same principles Shanti Deva is proclaiming, and eventually something shifted for the better. But as a result of years of oppression, the servants now attack the former masters. This is a familiar story. The roles of the oppressor and the oppressed switch back and forth. Lasting happiness, Shanti Deva says, depends on a true shift in the human heart, one that begins with wanting what's best for others because we see their joys and sorrows as our own. And this idea, it kind of reminded me, I think that there's a much more elaborate and beautiful understanding of post-colonial mindset than that, right? It's not just the oppressed and then the oppressors in South Africa and many parts of the world, but this idea that, are we any better than those we consider our cruel enemies when we have the power? And I remember last week, Mace was here, one of our beloved Sangha members, saying, she knows that this difficulty of exchanging self and other, meaning having compassion for all beings, if she was in power over those she considers to be abusing power, she's not sure she would act any better, right? And that's honest. That's like, anyone in this room feel like there's people out there abusing their power? And you'd like to have that power? Would we actually know how to do it well if it's not coming from like a bigger field of compassion? And not to say we shouldn't fight to take that power, but then knowing where it comes from. And it's interesting, and it really makes me think of, we last year read this beautiful story of the biography of the life of the Buddha called Old Path, White Clouds. And some of you may remember there's like a very revolutionary thread throughout the life history of the Buddha. He was always kind of inviting this radically compassionate view and shaking up the systems and the culture of the time. And so, pretty early on, maybe, I don't know, 10 or 15 years, maybe not even that long, maybe just 5 or 10 years into when the Buddha had awakened and his senior students, and he started having more and more influence over people throughout different kingdoms in the land. And many princes, there's a lot of princes back then, many princes joined the Buddha, right? And all the kings are like, oh my God, who's going to run the castle, right? But they were really so enchanted by this idea of awakening and moving beyond suffering. And so even though the Buddha monastics, they lived very simply, right? They had a robe and a begging bowl. That's it. At some point, they then got like a water filter, I guess. That was a benefit for them to help with having clean water. But they had such a simple life, but they came from a lot. And then there's this famous moment when the Buddha encounters Sunita. And Sunita is of the untouchable caste in India, right? And at that time, even making eye contact with someone who is not, if you're an untouchable and you make eye contact with someone who's not in your status, you could be punished greatly, if not with your own life, certainly harmed. And the Buddha, with his prescient knowing, he sees Sunita, who's moving towards the river to kind of clean up, and Sunita tries to avoid the Buddha, and then the Buddha, gets out of his way, and then the Buddha goes into his way, and then he tries to back up, and the Buddha moves forward. So eventually he's halfway in the Ganges River, just really trying to avoid eye contact, and the Buddha's like, my brother, I'm here with you. And he's like, I can't. And then Sunita is just mortified and says, I don't want to pollute you. I don't want to harm you, right? He is so entrenched in this way of the way that society has looked at him. He's internalized it. I'm not enough. I'm not deserving of compassion. I'm not deserving of care from other beings. And the Buddha says, all of us here are brothers. We are all the same. We all want to be happy and avoid suffering. Please join us. And it's just this, huge event. All the villagers are like, what's going on? This is, big upheaval to do this. It really disturbs the social order. Prior to then, no member of an untouchable caste had been included in any spiritual community in India, ever, right? And so word got back to the kingdom, and King Pasenadi, who was a good friend and kind of confidant to the Buddha, or the Buddha was his confidant, he heard about this and was like, oh God, it's not one thing, it's the other with this Buddha. This is before, by the way, they accepted women into the sangha. That took 15 more years. But it really, it's not because the Buddha didn't believe that women were equal, but the disruption to the social order is so profound. So the king makes his way over to visit the Buddha, maybe a week later. And as he's, the story is, as he's making his way to talk to the Buddha, he sees this radiant monk giving teachings and stops and listens and is so impressed, and then comes to the Buddha. He's like, who is that amazing monk? And he's like, oh, that's Sunita. He was a member of the untouchable caste, and he's one of our best teachers. And the king's like, damn it. But this is one version of that dissolving all barriers of compassion. And part of it, and part of the instructions in this part of the chapter too, is around really putting yourself in another's shoes. And we say that a lot, imagine what it would be like to be someone experiencing, homelessness. But also imagine what it would be like to be that person who you think is better than you. Imagine what it would be like to be any of the people you think are not as good as you or you just ignore, that neutral category. And to really give yourself a moment to kind of feel and recognize the humanness and the shared humanity, right? And the Buddha, with his clear seeing, he could see every single being as deserving of love, every single being, no matter what. And last week I shared this story from the book where when the Dalai Lama heard that Mao Zedong had died, he just openly wept, even though, so much pain and horror and death had happened as a result of Mao's policies on the Tibetan people. The Dalai Lama's heart knew, in his world belief, that Mao would be punished for all his violence. And he was so sad for Mao and what he would experience in his suffering in the next life. And you're like, oh my God. But these Olympic levels of compassion, they're so inspiring. And it's not just these high attained masters. Like, we meet people all the time where just the presence and compassion is like stunning. There are some, I think, shared qualities among these people that are sometimes hard for us to approximate. Generally, I think there's a lot more kindness when we're not in a rush and our schedule isn't overfilled. Anybody notice that? And then also, like, we're really applying ourselves to see the Buddha nature in every being. And, I just love that idea that, like, every single person in this room is already a Buddha. We're just, like, figuring out how to manifest that. And so that clear seeing, of seeing everyone that way. And, it's a bit different than this original sin idea. But even original sin, there's, like, the seed that we were good. So, like, can we, not ignore and avoid what might be harmful? Can we also, like, bring that very radical clear seeing? And in the time of the Buddha, the radical clear seeing, it undercuts societal norms. And the way that it undercuts our societal norms is like caring for other people instead of just ourselves. Like, that is not the message we're getting, right? The message that we're often getting is like, make sure you have yours, be the best. You need to really, like, achieve and succeed. And it's so hard to not fall prey to comparison and idealization and feel like that is and would be our source of happiness. But it's actually, if you pay attention for a week or a month or maybe a couple months, we start to see, the seeds of goodness that are right here outside of more acquisition or more achievement, and feel like the benefits of being present and good with others. And then there's a next one here. All the harm with which this world is rife, all fear and suffering that there is, clinging to the I has caused it. What am I to do with this great demon? That's kind of a huge statement, but all the harm with which this world is rife, every single harm, all the fear, all the suffering is clinging to this I. What am I to do with this great demon? If this I is not relinquished wholly, sorrow likewise cannot be avoided. For if he does not keep away from fire, a man cannot escape from being burned. To free myself from harm and others from their sufferings, let me give myself away and cherish others as I love myself. I like the wording on that. To free myself from harm and others from their suffering, let me give myself away and cherish others as I love myself. For I am now beneath the rule of others. Of this you must be certain, O my mind. And now no longer shall you have a thought that does not wish the benefit of beings. My sight and other senses, now the property of others. To use them for myself would be illicit. How much more so is it disallowed to use my faculties against their rightful owners? So this idea that our self-absorption blinds us to the preciousness and fragility of other beings. So let's use our sight, let's use our words, let's use our intention for other beings. And I love Pema's commentary here. When we play with fire, we cannot escape from being burned. This describes life in the cocoon. The more self-absorbed we are, the more we suffer. But we can't just snap our fingers and say, this I is just a label. I'm not going to think that way anymore. Our ego trips are deeply ingrained. They are, in fact, the very means that keep us kind of in samsara, So how do we get out of this? It's like seeing our sameness with others. Again, over and over, seeing our sameness with others. And there's one other passage that she has that I love here. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. When others are at fault, I'll take and turn the blame on myself, and all my sins, however slight, confess and make them known to many. Happiness, fulfillment, these I leave aside. The pain of others I will embrace. Inquiring of myself repeatedly, I'll become aware of all my faults. Indeed, I indeed am happy, others sad. I am high and mighty, others low. I am helped while others abandon. Why am I not jealous of myself? So this idea of like really turning towards the difficulty of others. I mean, it's very dramatic. Like even if others are at fault, I'll take the blame. Like that's so counterintuitive. But he's kind of inviting us to like cut against. And Pema says it beautifully. She says, this is a section on directing all blame towards the cause of our misery. That misery is our neurotic self-absorption. Rather than blaming others for our unhappiness or blaming ourselves in a harsh, mean-spirited way, we take clear and compassionate understanding at how our self-centeredness ruins our chances of lasting happiness. Our relentless self-importance causes us to suffer far more than any other culprit. So it's, I don't want to cast blame at anyone, but I do think it's meaningful to look at like the true source of our misery and suffering. And even if we're looking at like the physical pain in our body, right? And as was beautifully said, like there's the sensation that's so strong, like in our knees. And then there's like the added piece of the pain we create. And that's ours. And so similarly, like we look at our behaviors and our actions and our intentions, and when they're infused with a sense of compassion and care towards others, like there's so much more enjoyment. And not just for ourselves, but like for all beings. And I know it can sound harsh, this like, you're neurotically self-absorbed, you're like ego clinging. It's like a very, confronting way of pointing out. But we kind of need to be like we kind of need that little like sober slap of like, hey, check it out. You're making your own suffering. Like it's you. Like stop blaming the world. Stop looking for happiness there. So there's just this real confrontation in this last chapter. So, my gosh, I went a minute over, so let's take a moment. Come back to the body and the breath. Just feeling the simple presence of awareness and attention in the body. And with that spirit of remembering that this practice matters, we cut through any desire to hold on to the goodness of this practice by offering it up. And so if it's comfortable, placing hands in front of the heart, and doing this outrageous opening of the heart all the way open, imagining that all beings of all time, all beings as long as space remains, may I dedicate myself and my practice for these beings, that they could know freedom from inner and outer harms, that they could feel love and belonging, that all beings everywhere of all time, as long as space remains, could find the true causes of happiness, be free from the true causes of suffering. May all beings everywhere benefit from this practice and our collected energy. Thank you all so much. It's very beautiful to be here.